Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, October 7th, 2021, and we're here for a work session. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Catherine, can you please take the lead?
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you, Catherine. All right, today we have one quick announcement, a reminder. The 45th Annual Riverhead County Fair is this Saturday, October 10th, from 10 to 5 p.m. The country fair is a tradition in downtown Riverhead, and it will have carnival rides, great food, lots of exhibits and competitions, and there'll be live entertainment, and I hope to see you all there, and I hope the board gets to take a stride down this great event. Okay, we're going to go right into our first discussion item, which is matters surrounding the town's alcohol policy and review of Chapter 255 application process. Tim, I know you've been working very closely on this, along with Bob Kern, Monique Parsons, and Kelly Malasky. All of them are here with us today, and we want to welcome you here today. And Tim, do you want to introduce the discussion?
Yeah, these are things that the Business Advisory Committee work on, and they work on anything that involves any business in town. So with the Chapter 25s, 255s, and with the alcohol policy, the Business Advisory Committee broke up into subcommittees, and they had a subcommittee for the alcohol policy and a subcommittee for the Chapter 255s. We have already discussed at work session the 255s, but it's been a while, so we just wanted to briefly go over that again. And the alcohol policy, they would like to submit some changes that they would like to see made to the board. And we're going to have a discussion with Cap is here and Deputy Town Attorney McCormick and the Chief of Police, and we'll go over it and see what we can and what we can't do. Devin, can you check with Carol? She was making copies of both the...
And Bob Kearns?
Oh, you have them. Okay. Thank you.
I think we're going to lead with Bob Kearns, because,
Yes.
okay, Bob
So why don't you
Kearns?
guys come on up to the table? We'll do Chapter 255 first, I guess.
I think maybe the alcohol policy.
That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, since they're here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Be copies for the board and copies for the press.
Is this what you sent me the other day, Bob? Or is this something different? Okay, so that's on the...
That's on the website already.
Good morning.
Okay, so. Morning. You guys.
Yeah, we'll each take a copy of it, and Tim and Alec will get a copy for the press.
Just gotta cut this in half.
Just flip it down.
Carrie.
Throw it against it.
Everything's so damn heavy.
Oh, don't I remember this 3 years ago, when they were going.
Hey. Who's that? Jimmy Hendrix.
Dan.
Hey, Dan, I guess, I've never met you. How are you?
Bob, how you doing? Nice
Good.
to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Diane, Mike Carroll want to come in on this, for the 255? Okay. We're doing the alcohol first, so we
Yeah, I'm
have a
giving
little
you-
bit of time.
Yeah. This doesn't seem like. Small there, maybe it is.
What's that?
New application?
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Give it,
May I have a copy, Bob, please?
Do you have a copy for
Copy,
Kelly?
please.
Want to give me another? Oh, you have it in front of you.
Running me, man.
don't start.
You had amended a second time, Bob?
Which I know you've seen, but I thought we could
Yeah,
go
there's
over
a
it.
couple of minor things changed in there, okay? Minor.
Okay.
I sent it to you yesterday.
Alcohol policy.
Okay. Bob, you want to start off?
Sure. So Tim, if you'd rather start with the 255s, that's fine. Either way, okay? That's probably a little bit easier, since we've already gone through that.
The 255?
Yeah, at a
Okay, then
previous
let's
work.
just give a minute for Diane to come back. She was going to ask Carol to
Oh,
come
great.
in.
Okay. Oh, do I have a copy of it?
I don't remember though.
Yeah, in July, it was presented in a work session, the change in the 255, and actually, the entire town board, including yourself, were copied on it, and
Okay,
for
just
comment, of which we received none.
How long ago was that email sent?
That was sent in July,
In July?
and then,
Right, I remember reading it.
yeah, and then more recently, probably, let's say within the last 3 weeks, it was also sent out in preparation for this.
Okay, great. And no comments were received?
No.
Okay.
Is she going to come, Diane? Because they've decided to start 255 first now.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
all right, do you have the paperwork there?
You know what, I'm gonna need another copy.
Okay, Devin will
We
get it
can
for
do
you.
that.
We
Okay,
can do
great,
that for
thank
you.
you. Somehow, we have more alcohol policies.
Were there revised applications?
Yeah, there was actually, the application was not changed that much. The only thing that changed in the application was the amount of days to file for a 100 to 1,000 person event. We had suggested 30, and I'll wait for, Carol had said 45, and I'll reiterate that again for Carol's benefit.
Bob,
Yeah,
can we just backtrack a little bit? Can you just discuss what the 255 is for the public in case they don't know, and then you can go into the discussion?
sure.
I think it'll be a lot easier
Okay.
because you're going right into discussing different
Absolutely.
topics. Thank you.
So, in order to have an event in the town of Riverhead, there used to be what's called a Chapter 90. There was a short form and there was a long form. The short form at the time was a one-page document. The long form was a three-page document. What it morphed into in the previous administration, and I think, and Catherine was, you can chime in, Catherine, the attempt was made to create a new application, new code, to do events in the town. Now, keep in mind, in a Chapter 90, to do an event, there was somewhere around 30 days for a small event, 90 days for a large event. And don't ask me how, but what the 255, the application turned into 25 pages. The code, turned into 25 pages. The application did not match what was in the code. So if you were filling out an application and you wanted to reference the code for direction, you couldn't get it. So we termed those ghost questions. In addition, there was an environmental review. It was onerous. We submitted to Laura and Catherine. I had numerous conversations with Catherine in the beginning of this. I said this was onerous and we need to work on this. And it was 275 days if you wanted to do an event in the town of Riverhead. And there was a host of complications. One, you could not get workman's comp.
Excuse me, Bob,
Yeah.
I'm just gonna call Carol to the table.
Oh, yeah.
You should be at the table with us, Carol. No, Dave, here's a chair.
I'll take this one.
Okay,
Okay.
just because Carol does 255s.
How are you, Carol?
Carol, thanks for coming in. I know this got sprung on you pretty
She's
quick.
not used to being up here. It's all good. This is all good, Carol. So, Bob, as you were saying?
So, nobody was quite sure where the town was going. We understood that there was a jam up in processing applications, which was previously, before Carol, was coming out of the legal department. Okay, so we understood that.
Bob, when you say "we," it's the business.
When I say we, as president of the chamber, we got a ton of phone calls from people in the event business. Not only people in the event business, people in the hotel business, people who relied on events, whether it be delis,
Did you want
restaurants.
to join us, Steve? I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off. We
No,
have
that's
another
okay.
addition. Steve Shorga from the Riverhead Bid.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Steve.
So at the moment, we have Steve Shorga from the Riverhead Business Improvement District, and we have the president of the Chamber of Commerce, and they're the ones that have been working on this. And thank you for coming.
Yeah, and Steve is on the Business Advisory Committee for the town as well. So what happened was, there used to be, there's a parade and assemblies permit, right, which you do for town events. Then there was a Chapter 90, which you do for, really for private events. So there were two separate items. And what happened, and we brought this to the previous administration, and we said, you can't morph these two. They morphed them. It made absolutely no sense, and it made it very, very onerous. So we lost people, really good event people that would come here and do events in this town. They didn't want any part of it anymore.
Who were some of those?
I'll give you a good one. Starfish Junction was one who does events all over the East Coast, does events in Suffolk County.
So they're no longer doing any events here?
I think they're doing one thing based on maybe a drive-in movie. No, they don't want anything to do with Riverhead. They're one, I'd have to go back in my list. I did not bring that out of the 27 companies, and I'm happy to bring that and share that. And actually, that, if you go back, and I'm not sure we sent it we might have sent that to you already, because we sent a spreadsheet showing the applications from every surrounding town. We sent the code from every surrounding town to try and make our point that what Riverhead was doing was saying, we don't want events here. And I think didn't even understand why you would have events in the town. And when
Well, I don't think, Bob, I don't think it was, because I was there for the discussion, Tim was too. I don't think it was that we were saying we didn't want events. We were paying attention to the staff within the town and some of the problems that had come up, with people turning things in at the last minute and such. So I think
rightfully so.
that we were addressing that.
Rightfully so. Here's the problem. So they're a stakeholder, the town's a stakeholder, right? But what was not addressed, what you did not do, was talk to the stakeholders in the event business. So you tried to solve the problem from one side. And it turned into, I don't want to get into an argument about 275 days, but nobody's going to file an event application 275 days prior to an event. For what purpose? That's almost a year. You've got a line of vendors, et cetera, et cetera. No insurance company that insures events does it more than 30 days out. They were requiring insurance at that 275-day threshold. We came to you and said, insurance companies wouldn't insure. They thought, quite frankly, the people asking their insurance companies for workman's comp and insurance, they were like, are you on another planet? You know we don't do that. And we'd say, well, the town wants this. Well, can't help you. So why would anybody want to deal with the town? We had a lot of people that did not want to bring events here. And then I fast forward to a town square, which the Larry, is that his name? Who's Barry?
Barry Long.
Barry Long. What did Barry Long say over and over again? You can have a town square, but if you don't program it, it's useless. So under 275 days, who's going to program it? Nobody.
You are, that's why you're here.
Well, that's why we're fixing this. And you know what the most frustrating part of this was? We brought so much evidence. If this was a criminal case, it would have been a slam dunk.
Bob, let me just say,
Go ahead.
I'm not here arguing with you. I'm
Yeah.
just listening like everybody.
Yeah, but
Tim
Kat-
was on the board with me, we were all here. I'm not arguing with you, so I don't know,
Well,
I'm just listening.
I'm, what's frustrating for me, this was passed when, in late 2018, here we are in 2021 trying to fix it. And this was a group of volunteers, this could have been done, and we asked for this, okay? So I'm not saying you're arguing with me,
No,
but
there
this
were 5 people on the board.
you championed this, I tried to work with you on this to get,
I don't even
went-
know what you're talking about. I did
Okay,
not
I don't wanna-
champion this, Bob. That's false information. Okay, let's just move on. That's
Bob, maybe just-
incorrect history.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Maybe just go over the changes, we get into the changes and
Sure.
go over them so we
Let's
No
can.
move
problem.
forward.
Now, I don't have a 255, I gave mine away.
Yeah, you-
So, the-
I'm on a little bit of a time constraint here. Do you mind if I jump in at least on the ones that I'm going to chime in on?
sure, this is a 255 application.
It's not the alcohol policy?
Yeah,
No, it's gonna
I'm
be
sorry,
nice.
Steve, because I didn't think it would come, so I didn't do the alcohol policy
Oh,
first.
so we skipped it?
Yeah.
No, we're doing it.
We're
No,
gonna
we're
do it
doing
after
it.
this.
They just, you want to, do you need
I
to
just
do
have another thing I
something? You
want.
want to make your points before you go?
Well, hold on, we have to stay on,
Yeah.
on topic.
No, thank you.
I apologize.
Yeah.
For that, Steve.
We
No,
have,
it's okay.
yeah, Steve, we have to stay on topic
Yeah,
because it's
I
gonna
wanted to respect your
confuse,
time.
and this is
So-
a confusing topic
Yeah,
for the public
definitely.
also, and so that's why we're trying to, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
So, one of the things that this subcommittee did, one of the first things we did, we went and met with the chief to ask him his concerns. So we went to the stakeholders of the town. We knew what the event people wanted, but what we did was we went to the stakeholders of the town. We went to the chief, we went to the fire marshal, we went to Carol to ask them, what kind of problems do you have, blah, 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 okay? And in fact, we wanted to up the fine, which is in here, and it was, well, no, we shouldn't do it that high if you were late. Yeah, it should be high, okay? But, so, what would you like me to do? Just go?
Yeah, where are the changes?
Yeah, just
That's
go through
what-
the
that's
changes
all
on
we
the
need
I'll
to
red
go through the
marks and-
changes now. Okay. Let's see. So if we'll just go to page 255-1, and you'll see that with no parade or assembly or block party shall be permitted up the sidewalks. And we're making reference in red to where code already exists. In terms of, let's see. So what we've done, we've added parade assemblies and block parties, okay? This is where we get into the parade and assembly permits, because block parties are on public property. Page 2 is density on private property. The number of persons assembled on private property shall be restricted to a density of no more than 300 persons per acre. And then we put for private property, special event only. Let's see, we took that out. That is 300 people. Let's see. Penalties for offenses. Oh, we took out on 255-7, we took out imprisonment for a period of not exceeding 30 days or by both such fine and imprisonment. Left the fines in there, but we took out the imprisonment. Will be subject to an amendment fee. Let me just see here. I have Monique, she couldn't be on Zoom. Let me just see.
Okay, so you could just read.
Yeah, just some of the highlights, Bob.
Read the
Yeah, I'll read the
highlights.
highlights. okay.
That's it, read what was crossed off, the
Okay,
the
so let me
highlights
go to
and-
255-8, and the purpose of intent, which comes out, which is in red there. The purpose and intent is to support the town of Riverhead's 216 Boas goals through creative placemaking and support collateral initiatives that will make sorry, I'm waiting for Monique, and somebody else got me. Create a placemaking and support collateral initiatives that will make the town more vibrant and maximize the economic impact of the town of Riverhead with special events to support economic development and cultural tourism by generating foot traffic and attracting tourists and patrons.
Okay, and the next change?
Okay, so,
Just go right through it.
yeah, so,
What page are you on?
we're on page 255-8. On special event, it's already defined in Article 1.
Okay,
Okay, and 255-8, number 5, it said use of powered equipment required connection to public power. That's all been crossed out. Because that would stop people from using a buzzsaw, a chainsaw in their backyard. So let's see, where else are we? Let's go to the major ones. 255-9. Small event gatherings where 100 to 1,000 people attended expected at the event, and it was per calendar day, and we're putting at any one time. There are certain events that are timed events, and any one time makes a lot more sense than per calendar day. An example would be, I'll just use an example, a drive-in movie. If they're showing two separate movies and you're expecting 600, if you say, well, you can't have more than 300 cars, well, there's 300 cars at each one, and here you're asking, no, you have to say 600 cars. It's two separate events, essentially.
okay.
Let me just see what else.
Carol, were any of these changes driven by your office that are going to be helpful for you?
Did you get this
Those-
ahead of time?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, the only things that, Bob didn't speak about them yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
But there
they
were
get-
things that are going to expedite things on your end that are going to be more helpful for you?
I don't know about expedite.
Okay.
What do you mean?
He wants to change, right now it's 90 days before the event, and he's looking to make it 45.
Okay.
It's the time restraint, I don't know with the fire marshal and everything, getting a resolution and getting it to you guys to look over. I don't know if that's,
Is that doable for you guys?
we could try.
Well, I mean, Chief, weigh in.
I would
Sure.
talk to the time limits. There are those events that you need a lot of time, and
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
example, we just had two that we needed a lot
Yeah.
more time to review.
Yeah.
So, there are those that need a lot, and there's those that don't need a lot. So how you come up with that formula, it's up to you guys.
And reoccurring ones obviously are easier
Right,
to
so
deal
yeah,
with
no,
because you
right,
have a
yeah.
plan from the
So
year
we've done the
before.
country fair for,
Right.
how long? So we know what it's all about. Polish Fair, we know what it's all about. Alive on 25, we have it down pat. So those things can kind of be expedited, but if you go to
Do we want to
Scramble
word it that
or-
any new Chapter 255 event coming in goes to 90 days instead of 45? Any reoccurring one
I
can
think we need
come?
more time than that, Councilman.
Yeah?
I really do, yeah. No, I don't think there was enough time with our drag racing events, and it came down to the wire
You sure
where,
did?
at a week before, we're gonna tell them, oh, no, you can't have that. I don't wanna see that happen again.
No, I
want
don't,
anyone
I don't
be-
think any of us want to see that
Right, be
happen.
put in that position again.
Right.
So I think we need some time, and I don't know how it works. Maybe they have to present more of a complete application up front, so we can all see it and say, okay, this is good. I mean, both those events evolved over time, so it was with meeting after meeting after meeting with the fire marshal, myself, my staff, where we, honed it down to where it had to be. So don't ask me how you address that. Does that have to be done all over here? And then later on, it's only 90 days out that they get their approval? I don't know.
Just to be clear, and I agree with the chief totally. Carol, do you have, I know that they were asking for 30,
Right.
but that's for a small event. I want to be really, really clear. This is not for the
Who
drag
wa-
race.
who was, Bob?
So the,
No, the drag racing was a small event, well, in the beginning.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was considered a small
okay,
event,
well, that's,
probably.
all right, I don't want, so who was the subcommittee that was, the event stakeholders, right? If it was 100 to 1,000 people, it was 30 days. Carol had, said 30 days isn't enough, and you would ask for 45 for a small event.
At least, yeah.
Yeah, so, and the reason, in my recollection, was because the fire marshal was not sometimes he wouldn't weigh in for 10 days,
Yeah.
right? So by the time you guys pass a resolution, somebody doing an event might be a week away. So if they had vendors, and to Carol's point, and her concern, was that they had no time, which makes perfect sense. Do you recall, and I don't have it in front of me, but for a large event, I believe it's 120, you would need 3 months.
Yes, 120.
Yeah, nobody's looking for, 4,000 people to be 45 days, right? That's got to be 3 months in advance. Where that was picked up from, and I'm happy to send this town board the spreadsheet, is from surrounding towns. We looked at that. We also looked at what had been done in the past, but nobody's looking to do a 100 to 1,000 event, 120 days out. And a good example would be chicken.
You're talking about
chicken kids.
1,000 people, and that's 30 days?
Well, yeah, but it has been changed to 45.
Right.
And can I just
1,000
add,
and under.
can I add another thing to this?
That seems short for 1,000 people.
I
Carol, can
agree.
you speak to that?
Yeah?
I mean,
I
you do the
personally
work
would
here,
leave
and
it at
Dave
90.
Dave
It
does
seems to
this.
be working, so I don't know.
What did you say, I'm sorry?
I said I personally would leave it at 90 because it seems to be working.
For 100 to 1,000 people?
Yeah.
1,000 people, 30 days seems short.
I think that, I'll use for an example, when you did the drag racing and we held that event up the track, we put a strain on them, for example, on the Manorville Fire Department. And so you need to have enough time because you need to schedule meetings with the fire commissioners. And they're volunteers. They're not getting paid, and they have to adjust their schedules to find a convenient time to sit down with whoever that promoter may be, to review that. You need time for a chief of the department to find out if he's gonna, not the police, the fire first, to find out if he's gonna have proper volunteers to participate in the event, and if there's a desire for participation. And then you go into, into our fire marshal and our chief of police. And I think that you got to give them the proper time, especially when we're relying on volunteer services to approve some of these events, such as up at, specifically like EPCAL.
And to me, the EPCAL, and this is, to be clear, that event, that would fall under 120 days, and I don't have it, that's 3 months prior. That's not, nobody's asking for, we're talking about 100 to 1,000, and Carol, and, maybe what we need to do, because I think about chicken kids, 100 to 500, where's the threshold where, a small event under 500 is 30 days? I think that's something that we should really discuss. And I completely understand, 500 to 1,000 maybe has to go to 60 days or 90 days. I'd like to couple that with the idea of if we have an online application, especially if we had an online required field application, how much would that help your process? I'd like you to weigh in on that. I mean, just having an online application without required fields is iffy, but if there are required fields, it can,
Yeah. I think that's a great idea. I just don't know legally, like with original signatures and things like that. Documents, is that allowable?
that's more for Dan. I know, look, I get involved in very high-end deals that are multi-millions of dollars that using DocuSign. There are online notaries, so that are you can use. So maybe that's something that we need to look into and really get into the 21st century
Yeah.
and take the onus off not only your department, but this can be more efficiency throughout other departments.
One of the things I have found, Bob, in the past, though, in some of these applications is finding the actual signatory, the person who's going to be responsible, because you may have third parties involved. And so that's often the consideration, where you want to make sure you have the right person to actually execute the contract in a timely manner. We can work around the original versus DocuSign or even photocopies. And even in this day and age, things can be overnighted, right? So I think that is workable. But in general, the larger the group or variety of people involved, in general, the more time that is required by the town, not only to review, but to assign sufficient resources. I think that should be a guiding principle here as well.
I totally agree. I mean, when you get into large events, it's a whole other ball of wax. What we're talking, how many large events do we have? And Chief, you would know this. I mean, how many are 1,000 people? How many are, how many events do we have where there's 2,000 or 3,000 people or 4,000 people?
Maybe 4 off the top.
Yeah, not often.
Right.
So-
Not that
And a
often.
lot of time, the planning.
Half a dozen, maybe? Right.
But
Yeah, and a lot of times the planning can accommodate one person and 2,000 people. Because you're closing the road, you still need the same personnel, so it's not as exhaustive. Yeah, especially
Yeah,
the security planning, most of the time, it can accommodate most people.
And when we talk about town events, I mean, I know that, with like Alive on 25, it's almost like clockwork, right? But that's different.
Now it is.
Yeah, now.
Right.
And that's different.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Steve, is it really that easy?
Oh, it took a few years to get there.
But on, in terms of private events, and I know, Carol, you'll know this, like who's new, right? Who's coming in that you've never heard of that wants to do 2,000 people, all right? And if they start to mess up and start to try to get around anything, you're gonna be you're front line on this. But there are professionals that know what they're doing, and that's who we want to attract, people who know how to do this. So,
I don't think it's fair to put the onus on Carol
who's saying to
to
do that?
regulate,
Who's
to
saying to do that?
regulate things. So that's all I'm
Well,
asking.
who's asking Carol to regulate anything? So what we're asking for, right now, I think where we are is maybe we need a threshold, and Carol, I'm happy to talk to you about this, is what's the threshold? Up to 500 people is 45 days? I know your concern was the fire marshal, and I know the concern there was that he was understaffed. And I don't know how to address that in terms of, well, how do we shore that up to ensure that we can bring events for economic development into the town? It's like saying, okay, all the tires on the police cars are flat, so we can't do any police work today. How do we put air in the tire to make that happen? So I think we need to address that.
So this is the overview right now.
Yeah.
So is there any other highlight that we should know about?
No,
Okay.
not that, it seems like that right now, we are
You're
asking for.
satisfied with the changes?
Yeah, and I think
And
it's
BID
just
is
the timing.
satisfied with the changes as they are?
BID has not reviewed this, but
Okay.
it's been working mainly on the business advisory committee side.
All
Okay.
right, Steve, so I'm gonna ask you to please ensure and let the entire board know where you stand on
To
these
speak-
changes.
To speak to the bid, you're saying, try to get something from the bid?
No, yeah, the bid and yourself review these changes and let us know where you stand on
Well,
it.
you've been working on it with the business advisory.
I'm not on that committee, but
Oh.
as sitting on the board, yes, on the committee itself.
And I'm going to agree with the supervisor. I would like to hear from you. I would also like to hear from Carol in the town clerk's office, and I would certainly like to hear from the chief, because I know that you also oversee the fire marshals. So I'd like to hear from you guys on your thoughts on this.
I think you all need to sit down together
I agree.
and go through this
Yeah.
I agree.
before we finalize anything.
That would be a great thing, sooner is better. I mean, if we sit down, because, what I'm hearing, and I don't think, there's not gonna be any opposition. If we can work out something where, under 500 people, so it's not an onerous situation, and look what that time frame is, and online, blah, blah, blah. Let's get it done,
Yeah.
okay?
Okay, so that's great. You guys meet, report back to us. Simplified, 1, 2, 3.
Got it.
Where we
I want to
are.
hear whatever, I want to hear the
Wait.
input. I think it's good to sit down together. I agree with that.
I mean, I sit on a lot of different committees, and one thing I will say is that, we don't know the reasoning behind a lot of we don't know the back end of it, right? And why things are put into place, so, but you guys don't really know the challenges that we face,
Yeah.
right?
Right, and that's
So-
why you're here.
Well,
Yeah.
I think
Well,
you're.
yeah, but also having just a conversation in a meeting,
No,
you
not to
get a lot
do it
done.
now, Steve.
Really,
Yeah,
we-
and I think you're a great resource for us on this, and as a board member, I want to hear from you.
Really,
Okay. We
where
all
this
wanna hear
started
from
was
you.
back in 2018, when we as a board tried to change this all around, and we really didn't invite the stakeholders to get involved, because there are some things we honestly weren't aware of that's on their part, the people that are applying for these events. We should have brought them into the mix from the beginning to help hammer this out. I think that's why we are where we are now.
Well, I do agree that it's always good to hear from the stakeholders, but as I recall, and, you know, you were there with us, this went on for weeks.
Oh, this was
For weeks, so certainly
very
there were
trying.
opportunities too for people to
Right.
email us and weigh in, because I remember how this dragged out.
Yeah, but it would have been better if we brought them to the table in the beginning, and I think that's now what's going to happen because Bob has met with these people, and now he can bring his ideas from the stakeholders and meet with the town people and try to work something out that's going to be amendable for
Yeah,
everybody.
which we did. We did, and we're happy to keep going back to get it right, you know? I
All
mean,
right.
that's the first thing we did before we even talked to the group, was met with the chief, the fire marshal, and spoke with Carol,
All right.
you know? Anyway,
So Bob, I'm glad to see, and Tim, that this is finally moving forward.
Yep.
You have a direction, meet with them, and report back to us, and we look forward to seeing the final project.
okay.
All right, and I think we're gonna move on, because I know Steve is at a time constraint, and
Yep.
we need to hear from him. We're gonna move on to the alcohol policy.
So what's in red is pretty obvious. I'm not gonna go through it, okay?
Can I jump in, do you mind?
Yeah, please do, yep.
So,
Go for it.
Yeah,
I sit
go.
on the Business Advisory Committee. I recently joined the committee for the changes for the alcohol policy, mainly because of an issue that, not necessarily an issue, just a clarification that we need to find for, that happened over the summer during 1125. You know, so that started on the bid side of things, and going through the progression there kind of lended itself nicely to work with the Business Advisory Committee and work with the town to try to, again, have an understanding and also try to work on a resolution. So the two things that at least I'm going to discuss in regards to the changes have to do with the sampling of liquor, as well as the legal age to serve. And I'll start off with the legal age to serve.
1 second, Steve, I'm sorry. Are we good with Carol at this point?
Oh, yes, Carol, we're not gonna
Let's
keep
let
you.
poor Carol go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol, have a great day.
Carol, thank you for coming in on
You're
Lawrence
welcome. Bye,
notice.
Carol.
Bye.
So I'm happy to kind of shed some light as to how this became the current policy in place and how that became challenging for businesses. This year, and we work very closely with CAP, I'm very thankful to have you guys to lend many guidance. But you know, after one of the 1125s, you know, Kelly gave me a call, said, Steve, you know, oh no, this was before. This is
For the age?
when we're doing the tip certification, right? And she said, Steve, you know, one of the Penn participants, which we didn't do Penns this year, but that's what we call
For
them.
the tips training, so.
For the
in
tips
this-
training.
Yeah.
Right. She said they're under 21. And I said, yeah, well, you know, it's 18 to legally serve in the state of New York. Well, not at the Town of Riverhead events. So, you know, and you expressed that, you know, I train 18-year-olds in order to serve at restaurants, but you can't do it at events because of the regulations by the town. So, that, and looking at the town policy, that is completely correct. With the current state of affairs and the challenge that many hospitality industries are facing, this was an uphill battle to try to find people, just work in general. And, you know, I hate to say it, but also those two people that legally were permitted in the state of New York to serve lost hours in those days as well. I definitely understand the amount of people that are at events as well, and I'm assuming that's where this came into place. But the one thing that I beg you to realize is that, you know, you have security that's brought in at most of these events. You have extra PD that's at the events. You have rules and regulations that are given, that provided by both the events as well as CAP, to help guide these people that are serving at the events. You have additional things that are put into place from the alcohol policy in regards to wristbands, in regards to size of cups. So that being said, I feel like it's an even safer place to be in order for the people that might be 18, 19, or 20 in order to serve than it would be at a normal restaurant. So that's the first thing, and, you know, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, or do we know why we selected 18? Is there any guidance that was given?
21.
Why we
Select.
selected
21.
21.
Your concern is about the
Oh, sorry, 21.
servers, like the 18-year-old servers who work for you can't serve because, at public events.
At public events. If you're at a restaurant in the town of Riverhead, you can serve as being 18,
The
as
state
19,
the
as a
state
20.
allows it.
So they're allowed
Stay-
at
stay allowed
restaurants,
to that 18.
but they're not allowed
Okay.
at public events.
Well, for most of our
So-
policies, we follow state guidelines
Exactly.
anyway, so I don't know why we would differ in this regard. Is there a legal reason for us?
Right, there's not a legal reason since the Alcohol Beverage Control Act did go to 18 years old as a serving threshold. But to answer Steve's question directly, the town of Riverhead is a municipal corporation. It's not a drinking establishment, right? It is not a bar, it's not a brewery. And I think what cannot be denied is that, in general, 21-year-olds have a greater maturity level, in general, than 18-year-olds. And I wasn't involved in selection of the 21. I presume it was because at that time, the ABC law was 21 in terms of service. But
Well, drinking probably.
and drinking, right, it was equal to the drinking laws at that time as well for being 21. From a legal standpoint, even though the law allows 18-year-olds to serve, from a legal standpoint, I would be more comfortable in leaving it at 21, notwithstanding what Steve had said regarding personnel and resource issues. Because again, those 3 years of maturity, when we're dealing with alcohol on town property, I think is a built-in insurance policy to ensure that nothing untoward happens. And let's be honest, in terms of, for example, the sampling sizes, right? My concern is, we have a policy regarding sampling, right? And no one is literally utilizing measuring sticks and measuring devices as to the amount going into any given cup. And so, regarding the age of a server, I'd have more of a comfort level at 21 than 18, only because I just think there's more of a maturity level, again, in general, to reemphasize, for a 21-year-old as opposed to an 18-year-old. Given the fact we're dealing with municipal property in the town of Riverhead.
I just want to chime in on what he said from a substance abuse prevention standpoint. So, well, I'm not sure, I know it's 18 to serve in New York, but they may require supervision for people that are 18, 19, and 20. So I don't know if those outside events would have that additional supervision of someone that's over 21. And also, public events tend to be a more fast-paced environment, so they're seeing a lot more people at any given time. However, if the restaurant is open during the event, then they would be able to serve in the restaurant. And I think what Dan said, they may have like 2-3 years more experience. So I think that's why it was put into the policy as well.
I think if you're purchasing alcohol in a restaurant, and your waiter is 18 and he or she is going to a bar, and there's a much more monitored effect where you're collecting a drink and then you're delivering it to the table, like you say, there's certainly more supervision inside a closed establishment as opposed to a commercial tent outside or on a fairground, where you may have, a tougher ability to have that same oversight.
I mean, to
If
that
you're putting
extent.
little cups of beer on the table and people taking it is different.
Well, we don't do that, but you have police that are walking up and down the street. That's not happening in a restaurant, right? You don't have a police officer that's standing right there making sure that, and security that's also there. You don't have wristbands or other policies that we couldn't have put in place that aren't put in. And as you said, Kelly, like, you take 2 steps into a restaurant and then an 18-year-old can sell at Alive 125, at the country fair. They can still do that. And it's at the event.
And can I just chime in, we used the restaurant as a scenario. I ran a winery. We saw 2,000 people a day. We had 13 people. I would say 11 of them were under 21. That's number one. They were all tips trained. And that begs the question of, and I totally cannot make the assumption of the maturity assumption. Because I've had 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds that are just as mature as 30-year-olds. They take their job seriously, they take their tips training seriously, and I've been tips trained, and it's a serious thing, okay? It's extremely serious. Whether it's an 18-year-old, a 21-year-old, or a 30-year-old, you screw up, the onus is on you. So,
Steve, can you describe what tips training is?
Yeah, so tips training, in regards to like Alive 125, we work with CAP, and the whole goal of it is to help promote serving in a safe way, right? And looking for certain signs as to if someone's inebriated. It really sets the tone for how they should be serving effectively for
Yeah, so, I actually did a training for, Twin Forks, who's participating in the country fair a few weeks ago. The goal of the tips training, and I typically do the on-premise for, public events, because our public events are mostly restaurants, so it helps them in the restaurant, and it also helps them at the public event. And the main goal of it is to prevent intoxication and underage drinking, and it enhances their skills to properly deal with a situation or de-escalate a situation if there is intoxication. So it gives them those people skills to be able to respond effectively to problem situations that have to deal with underage drinking or intoxication. And it's pretty effective. We've trained over 200 individuals in our town just through CAP. And you can also do the training online or through another place, but right now CAP provides that for free for public events.
I
And I
think
like
what
it.
we
And it's
may
also
want to
required.
recommend.
Yeah, it's required.
Yeah, we would recommend that if we do go to 18, that they must be,
Well, everyone
They
has
have
to be
to be.
tips
They
trained
have to
for,
be.
as per the town policy.
Right.
that would be great. But write it into the code.
It's in,
I have to weigh in, I have to say that I think the state law is silly, 18 years old. If you have to be 21 to drink, you should be 21 to serve. That makes absolutely no sense in my mind.
You're serving it, you're not drinking it.
You're serving it, that's why.
Right? Could be, but maybe.
I'm not gonna be walking and sipping and then.
Maybe.
I have to say though, I mean, from an employer standpoint, a lot of establishments wouldn't have employees, because.
That's the problem.
That's really the issue, and that's
It is,
part of
especially
why
now.
the state did that, number one. Number two, I'm very happy to let you guys know that some 10 years ago, I went to the town board and asked them to require tips train at events to mitigate some of these problems. So, asked before I knew Kelly, but Kelly does a great job, I love it. So yeah, we need 18, 19, 20-year-olds in these establishments.
but they can't, but for public
and-
events,
And the
it's
town events.
different.
We need that opportunity. I'm not saying, that people are gonna be sourcing these people, but I believe in the tips training.
Chief, how many of these events a year we would have?
As far as alcohol being served,
Yeah,
There's a lot.
yeah, we're gonna come up with
Yeah,
the
we do
same
have-
half a dozen or so, right?
12?
Half a dozen, 12, I don't know. I mean, 11,
it's increasing, I
25,
feel like.
Right,
Yeah.
country fair, Polish fair.
Oktoberfest,
Oktoberfest
reflections in the
is a-
Great,
fall.
Doesn't
yeah,
matter,
actually, we have that. People in Riverhead love our events.
You're proposing SantaCon, right?
Town board meeting?
That would be on the individual.
Don't give that.
Well, in addition, we're looking to, to Steve's point, the security, we're also looking to make sure that in this policy that there are day-glow wristbands worn so security can identify and police can identify really easily, if somebody's got a cup in their hand.
So in regards to the survey, I think the biggest thing that we're asking is just that we follow the SLA, right?
Yeah.
Those are the foremost, most knowledgeable people that are making these decisions, right? Whether you agree with it or not, or you have your own opinions, that's what the SLA is there for.
Well,
And
actually,
that's
I
all
refer
the
to Kelly, actually.
Okay.
She's dealing with this on a regular basis.
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I think we should follow, my personal feelings, we should follow the state law on this
I think so.
and not
Also,
get
how about you?
confused.
Yeah, my family's in business and we have restaurants and finding capable people to serve food or alcohol or anything for that matter is getting worse and worse. It's really a tough environment right now for businesses, and so I would assume for event and party holders as well. I would
But that could be
certainly.
temporary.
What's that?
That could be temporary, right?
It could get worse.
The way things are going, it's getting worse.
Okay.
Anyway, I don't think we have to vote on it, but I appreciate
Yeah.
hearing both sides of the story, and I certainly understand from the CAP standpoint.
Yeah,
that they're-
listen, this
Yeah.
is up to the town's discretion. We serve as an advisory when it comes to
Yeah.
youth and adult substance use prevention, and this is why I think it was written into the policy for an extra protection for the town. So, just, businesses are a different story, 18 and poor within that, so, I think I was just explaining why I think it was written in.
Okay, so Bob, you're gonna meet, redevise this 255 for us and
Yes.
come back when it's fully completed.
Yeah, on the 255, the other thing in the alcohol policy, and I want to address what Dan said, is that I know when there's beer, they have to serve in drams. The other thing that's in here is that when there is a distiller that hands out samples at public events, and to the state law, they're allowed a quarter of an ounce. And we want to be, again, consistent with the state law. Even in the policy as written, where it's in the scope, it says that in case of a conflict between this policy and the laws of the state of New York, the New York State laws, rules, and regulations take preference. I mean, so we want to get that quarter ounce, okay, and, you could have an event here, and somebody could be handing out quarter ounce samples at Michael's and then come to the event. This way, we're in control of it, we know it. We know who we're serving to.
So
I
just to
think you have to
clarify-
look at the containers that they're serving them in, because the containers that were being used, it was just being poured into the containers, and they were basically, I'm gonna say maybe half the size of a shot glass. That's more than a quarter of an ounce. I mean, that would be a half ounce, because I think one shot is considered 1 ounce.
Well, the good news on that, Tim, is that these pourers, you can buy pourers that are just a quarter of an ounce, and that can be checked like that.
Great.
So that can be regulated real easy. And I totally agree with you. I mean, we're not looking for anybody to go wild or skirt around this stuff.
And we're not also asking for liquor drinks to be served at these events, right? Because right now it clearly says beer and wine only, right? And we're not advocating that we should.
Yeah, that's still.
I think what the town has to take into consideration when it comes to the samples is that they're free, so it's increasing access to alcohol at the event from a public health standpoint. So that's something the town needs to take into consideration when they're reviewing the proposed changes.
And I did look over, I did review all of this, and Kelly actually sent us something. I would like, Chief, I would also like to hear from you. Kelly sent us some of her concerns, and I would love to hear from you as well. But there's certainly a lot more to these changes than just changing that age. There's something in here like that you can even be having, that you can have alcohol at Stotsky Park and such. Kelly, do you want to mention?
So-
Before we jump off of that, mind if I kind of
Yeah.
chime in a little
Yeah.
bit more? Thank you.
Oh, I thought you were done, sorry.
No, it's okay. And I'm only really talking about those two items personally.
Right,
'Cause I really
but I
haven't
just
done-
wanted
done-
people to know there are more, that's not all there is.
So in regards to this, and again, this came up when we had a conversation,
Yeah.
and we said, a business, a town of Riverhead business has been participating in Live on 25 since its conception, doing this. As of right, with the state liquor authority, they do have the right to sell under their marketing permit that they can do samples of liquor. They sell the bottles that are there, not for consumption at the event, but the way that the policy is written, and I agree with you, Dan, this would block the sale of alcohol at the event. Whether that was its intent or not, I think it was mainly based around issues that had happened in the past with people consuming alcoholic drinks at the event, not a business in the town of Riverhead trying to sell their product, which they legally have. In the 5 or 6 years we've been doing this, have you ever seen anyone walking down the street drinking a bottle of liquor? At a Live on 25, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Okay. So, and I personally don't feel that taking a town business and saying, well, you guys can't participate, is a good thing when that same challenge, people can go to their car and grab a bottle of alcohol and do the same thing, or go down to the liquor store down the street and do the same thing. If they're going to do it, they're going to do it, and that's why we have security, and that's why we have police there to protect us from that situation. I really don't feel like the objective of this policy was to impact a business in a negative way like that. And of course, again, I refer to the SLA in regards to their guidance as to what is permitted at these events per their marketing permit.
So let's just clarify, so for the newer town board members, what Steve is alluding to is the present alcohol policy, which prohibits the sale and consumption of liquor, including whiskey or other spirits, on town property. That is expressly prohibited in the alcohol policy as it presently exists. What Steve is proposing is to allow the service of liquor, hard liquor, spirits, including whiskey, at town events, for example, Live on 25 or other such events, whether it be Oktoberfest the Riverhead Country Fair or anything like
And
those.
just to clarify, as samples?
As samples.
As
Or
samples.
non-consumption? Just
Right.
please to.
Absolutely. But to address Steve's point, and this was my concern I reiterated before, and Councilman Hubbard also mentioned it, and I know the chief has weighed in on this before. We are not, and when I say we, the servers themselves are not literally measuring the amount of alcohol going into any individual container.
But you can with the pours.
You can do
Well,
that.
but the question is that being done on a
Well, we can
consistent?
change that if that's what you guys would feel comfortable doing that. I mean, this is why we,
Right.
have the back and forth.
Absolutely.
I like changing the pour, but, to the pouring, but I also I would like to make this, that it would be only a product produced in the town of Riverhead. So we don't have stuff coming
People
from
coming
all
in,
over the
right.
place and having the floodgates open for sampling of hard liquor. I think we know what's made here in Riverhead, and I don't think we're gonna be bombarded with a bunch of people trying to give away samples of spirits, but where one particular company, that's what they make in the town, using local ingredients, I would like to see it, but I want it controlled with the pour. It's gotta be controlled with the pour.
I would almost go to New York State on that, but that's, New York State, because I look at farmers markets, and these people can go to farmers markets in the city, they can do a sample, if somebody they like the sample, they can buy the bottle and leave. And our stuff is generally more expensive than liquor stores, so anybody that wants to, not go to the liquor store and buy a bottle, they would be doing that walking around with it. So I would ask that goes to products made in New York State. But
Even when we were hosting the farmer's market, that same business was there, again, selling their bottles and doing the samples as well. Now, given, an event is a little bit different, and I do understand that, but again, from a legal standpoint and what they're eligible to do with the SLA, and I would agree, listening, and why I'm here is we don't want to hurt a business, right, with this, and I don't think that was the intent, the way it was written, and, Dan, I do agree with you, the way that it was written does prohibit that, right, but again, I don't think that was the intent.
Well, I think, quite frankly, I think it was because in general, hard liquor and whiskey has a greater alcohol content than beer or wine. And given the fact that we're not necessarily controlling the sample sizes, it stands to reason that
Who's
an
not
individual.
controlling? The town is not
No,
controlling?
the servers themselves,
server,
right?
okay.
So on an individual basis, right?
Sure.
So in general, then, it's fair to say you can become more inebriated more quickly with whiskey or other hard liquor than you would necessarily with beer. And given the fact we're not controlling the number of samples that an individual can imbibe at an event, correct? We're not limiting people. So Jane Smith's not
yeah.
being limited to the number of samples that she can receive, right, when she
I mean,
comes
what
in.
I would say to that is that, that's where I would be open to say the same
that's
people that are
the-
doing that should be tip certified as well, and that
Of course.
is.
But yeah, I think that when something is free, too, people tend to take more of it. So are they pre-packaged, or you can drink
But is the
them?
assumption that, this person, the person is giving out 20 shots to, or
Not
or samples to
necessarily
someone? Is
No,
that?
no, not
that's
necessarily.
what's going on.
No, not necessarily, no, but it's a risk exposure issue, right? So since we're dealing with these events with multiple alcohol servers at any of these given events, it stands to reason that it's not being as supervised as it would, let's say, in a traditional drinking establishment, right? Where you have a traditional bar, you may have a manager overseeing those bartenders, right? In these types of events, and we love the crowds, right? We love all the people coming in from a pro-business standpoint, but that does lend itself, obviously, to a frenetic pace of alcohol service, which is not consistent with what you see in a regular drinking establishment. Coupled, of course, with the fact that we are a municipal corporation as the town of Riverhead, we are not a private vendor. And that brings with it other responsibilities over and apart what's contemplated under the
Sure.
ABC law.
I think now we have 3 distilleries in the town of Riverhead. I don't have an issue with having a conversation with them to see what they, how they handle that, right? Maybe they say, if they're only doing 3, if they have 3 different products that they sell, or if they limit the number, what they feel comfortable with, we can get some feedback from them. But, the reality is no matter what event you do, you always have some sort of, risk, right? I mean, that's not to say that someone doesn't go to their truck, chug a bottle of whiskey, go and buy 1 beer, and we're in the same boat as what you just discussed, correct?
That is correct. But that actually strengthens the argument of greater oversight and scrutiny, right?
Which is now what we rely on tips, so that we're not. So if someone is inebriated, you look for the signs and you stop.
Right.
If I just chime in on that. With somebody who's handing out samples, if you kept coming to me, I'm not losing money giving you more than one sample. I want to give
Right.
one to everybody at this table. I'm not going to,
But you're not 18 years old, so.
yeah, but.
Hasn't been for a
then-
while.
Then I'll say this, you know what, 1 second. I'm going to say this, then tips training doesn't work, which I don't believe is true, because we've had our employees tips trained. I've never seen one of them screw up, okay? So if you believe tips training doesn't work, then stick to 21.
Honestly, every time the article comes out, when you do the tests, I send it to my front desk staff or all my bartenders and say, this is real, right? They know they're gonna get brought away in cuffs if they do something they're not
Absolutely.
supposed to.
It's a real deal, and I'm serious. If you don't believe in it, don't even have people tips trained.
But we also talk about like the whole, well, these might be 18-year-olds that are serving this. And, Kelly, you had mentioned that the SLA might even say that even if they're 18, they still need someone that's of age that is
Yeah.
there supervising them. So I just want to make sure that we keep that into consideration when we have these discussions.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Well, interesting
So,
stuff.
just to, because I want to address Kelly's, because Kelly made comments on this. She was the only,
So, can I just say something really quick first? So, I just want to say, Riverhead CAP and the Riverhead Community Coalition for a Safe and Drug-Free Youth, we support a strong alcohol policy. We think that the current alcohol policy is a very strong alcohol policy. I know many of you weren't here. I know Councilman Hubbard was here, but in 2015, CAP actually worked with the town of Riverhead to create its first ever alcohol policy for public events. So before 2015, there was no law regarding alcohol consumption at public events. So this was great in terms of preventing intoxication and underage drinking at events. And we did this because actually our PNA survey, which is a survey we do in the school, and our environmental scan did indicate that youth were accessing alcohol at public events in Riverhead. So then that's how this really came about, us creating this policy 7 years ago. And we did a lot of research, the town did a lot of research, and the policy was written based on, evidence-based stuff that has happened, that has worked in other communities and other states across the country. We did a lot of just like looking around, seeing what has worked, what doesn't, what will protect the town. But when I heard that there were proposed changes, I reached out to Bob. He reviewed his proposed changes with me, and I did provide some feedback on those proposed changes and some current concerns that we had from a prevention standpoint. CAP believes that you can serve alcohol responsibly at a public event, and it can also be profitable, safe, family-friendly. We do a lot of work with the public events. We do the tips trainings when we're able to. Like I said before, we've tips trained over 200 people in the community. We help to provide wristbands. We provided wristbands for the country fair. The signage that communicates the laws. We work with the police department to provide the barricades and compliance outreach and compliance checks for these events. So a lot of work has gone into this, 7 years in the making this alcohol policy. And we just think that a strong alcohol policy is really important to protect youth in our community and to keep our events family friendly.
And we agree. But Kelly, to address, I know what's in here, to address some of the other things you talked about, was not allowing it at Stotchke Park and Bayberry Park, serving of alcohol at events, okay? And Bayberry Park, which is really, really small. You had no problem with Veterans Memorial Park.
I'm gonna head out.
So-
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your input. Yep.
Steve, thank you for coming.
And I'm trying to see, and just correct me if I'm wrong, because I want to, address, let's see. I think that was that was one of your other issue, right, was the parks.
Yes, we don't think that alcohol use at our parks are the smartest idea. It's a place where youth go, that it's family friendly and alcohol free and.
And beaches, parks and
Right, yeah, parks and beaches, and I believe you're not supposed to consume alcohol at parks and beaches in general in the town of Riverhead.
Was somebody submitting to change that?
Yeah, that's in here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, And so I think part of it was there was, like if the beach is closed, if it's at night and somebody has a wedding on the beach, are you okay with that? If, somebody rents the beach from a town?
I think that's up to the town's discretion. Do you guys think that that's?
You know what?
That's
I
something-
want to say a few things. I did look over this, and I want to look at it some more. Certainly, we want to be pro-business in Riverhead, and we want to help our restaurants survive in the downtown area, but I also want to hear more from CAP. I want to talk with the chief. I want to look at everything, but I could say straight up, right away, I don't like the idea of alcohol at Stotsky Park and Bayberry Park. Those are parks for, children are there, there's a Little League there. I want to look over everything else, but I can tell you right out, I don't like that. I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, I think
Not-
that was.
Not
that
what
was
we want in
agreed.
our town.
Yeah, nobody had a problem with that, not having it there. And Stotchie Park.
It's in
there was
here.
one-
So
There-
why is
that
it-
was
why
a
is it added in
change,
here?
that's a change in
Because
here.
I just, in fairness to Kelly, this is what was presented, and this is what we're presenting now. One of the things what we're talking about at night, and Bayberry Park is very, very small. Anyway, I'm happy to continue this discussion.
It sounds like we need
The most important thing is the serving age and we'll take the parts out, the serving age and the serving size.
Okay, and that could be easily
I think that's an easy fix.
worked out. Okay, good.
Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
So we'll have further discussion on this, I presume? I'm not
Yes.
directed to do anything at this point.
We're going to have further
Policy.
discussion. Okay.
We'll set up a meeting at the
Give him my
2:50.
So 2 years from now, when we talk about this again, we'll sit and say the same thing and nothing
I
will
hope
get
not.
done. We just had a conversation on it, people. What more do we need? I'm not really sure. This just gets kicked down the road and kicked down the road. And that's exactly what happened with the 255. It's been kicked down the road and kicked down the road. That's why nothing gets done in town government. Why do we have to need to reconvene? If we're the board, we make the decision.
Well,
You have an opinion or you don't.
I kind of
don't-
agree with Catherine, I don't want any alcohol at the parks either. So
I
if that's
agree.
really in here, we need to go
That's
back
in
to
here.
the.
There's a few other
Yeah.
things in here, Frank. I think
Yeah,
we
that,
need
I
to
don't
get
have a
it
problem.
right. You know what? Last time, Tim, it went on for months and months and months. We're certainly not looking for that.
And we're still here redoing it.
So,
Okay, so there are three issues here. Why don't
been a
we just
couple of
address
That's
those
what I'm
three
saying,
issues?
address the three
and then move
issues
forward,
that
which is the
everybody's in
size,
agreement with
correct?
is,
The
are the
size,
main.
the age.
No, there's
and-
more than
and-
three
and
issues.
alcohol.
what are the other ones?
No. I mean, I thought
I think
there
that's
are
gotta
others in
be
here,
the
correct,
one
Kelly?
with the
Yes,
spirits
yeah.
being served. I
There's
mean, there's
several
a few
things
more
that are
points in
crossed
there
out.
than just say,
Right. All over.
besides just samples. So we want to address, that there's going to be more supervision. I wrote them all down.
Okay, so work on having it.
I'll work with the chief
Right.
real
We can
quick.
move it on.
Correct.
We can move forward.
Kelly.
Tim, do you want to address this stuff
I'll-
right
I'll-
now?
we're
and
happy
then
to-
have
Can
it
we,
revised?
then if you are not comfortable making a decision right now, can we put a date to get back together and do this so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle again? Can we do this in 4 weeks?
I was just saying, give
I'm
us
fine
some
with
up.
that.
4 weeks,
Give us
another
some up.
work session in 4 weeks?
I want the correct language in here. You
Yeah,
can't
no,
guys-
understood.
right.
That's why you're gonna have to
You have a
sit
month.
down with Dan.
Right.
You have a month to get it done, but not go back and start again, like Tim said, let's just start the discussion from scratch.
I'm with
But
you.
everybody has to chime in, and Catherine, if you have concerns, make sure that you reach out to the chief and to Bob, work out the terminology, get a final draft to us a week before, in case we have questions, and then hopefully we can just come in and address it.
Okay, and can I say one thing on the 255s? The only sticking point, and I'm with you, Tim, 100%, is the amount of time and the amount of people. So
Okay.
if I'll sit with Carol.
Yeah, you
and
gotta
Chief
sit with Carol and
And
the
the
chief.
fire marshal, okay?
Okay.
And let's make it comfortable for everybody, and the 255 is done.
I think
I
you
thought
had
we
a
were
key
gonna-
point there, though, as far as new applications. I think might need more time than just,
Yeah, I
the
agree with
traditional
that. I
one.
think that's something that has to be talked about,
Right.
because it makes sense. The country fair you've done, you've got a pack, I know you've got folders in
Right.
there for these events that reoccur, and they're all set up, and they're much easier to do.
What
Something
I
new
don't-
coming in, the drag racing being a perfect example takes a lot
What was
more
the
time.
timing on that? How much time, Carol's not here, were they given on that? To your point,
We
Oh,
got
they
those
put
in
in
the
months
spring,
before.
right.
They
In the
put in
spring we
many
got
months
it,
before.
yeah.
but was it complete?
No,
Was-
there was a lot of work to do, a lot of
So
research.
it wasn't a complete application?
No,
Diane,
No.
can you come to the mic?
Is this on?
Because I know you're talking.
That's not on. But, yeah, they put in months ahead of time, but the problem was it was new and it was drag racing, which is
And it was a
something.
complicated,
Right, it was complicated, there was a
complication.
lot involved, and it wasn't something that had been done before. When you're doing 5K runs and 10K runs, even if there's a new applicant, we're used to 5K, 10K runs, we're used to carnivals or bazaars. So even if they're new applicants, we're used to that structure. But the drag racing was totally new. So that was something that brought a lot with it that we did not foresee. But it was months in the planning, and a lot of back and forth, phone calls, and with the changing of the applications, and
And the contract.
there was, exactly. So there was a lot involved in that one, because it was something new. And when there is something new, a new event that we've never seen before, it does take careful review from police department,
Right.
fire marshal. So that
We need a
one
category
in
then,
particular
yeah.
had some elements to it that really we had to pay careful attention to.
Perfect sense. We need some sort of, we need a category. We need to come up with a category for that. And, okay.
One thing I
Makes
don't
sense.
see is though, Monique had worked very hard on revising the actual application, and it was a more simplified version of filling it out, and I just. I don't know
I'll
if
send that
was-
to you guys.
That was completed, but she just said there was a lot of questions on the current application
Yeah.
that often didn't apply, or wasn't necessary.
They will all, yes.
So I'd like, if we're adopting the code, I'd like to adopt a new application with it.
Okay, I'll send that to you.
we actually have it. It's on the back side here.
Oh, is it? Oh,
Yeah. With the crossouts and with the red comments.
oh, wait. Do I have that?
That's alcohol, that's something else.
For alcohol.
Alcohol, no, but
Yeah.
I mean on the 255.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I'll-
255,
I'll
she
get
was like,
that.
there's a lot of things
Okay.
that seem antiquated, and she wanted to drop out.
Yes.
To
That
make
they
it
weren't
a
in the code.
simplified process.
Can I just say one more thing about the alcohol policy? If the town decides that it is going to make changes to the alcohol policy, I think that it should be considered, the marijuana is on the forefront, and we might want to think about what we want marijuana to look like at public events in our community as well. So that's something we really need to take into consideration as well.
Because you were saying if we're allowing the alcohol, like at Stotsky Park, it opens it up also.
Yeah,
for
we really don't want to
marijuana.
open a floodgate to access to marijuana at public events as well for youth, so.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a big issue too, you
That's
know,
a
no
big
alcohol, no
issue.
smoking, no marijuana. kind of
Right.
thing.
Well, we don't
Probably
allow
wise for us
smoking on
to
the
get ahead
beaches
of
now,
it.
so you wouldn't allow marijuana to be smoked on the beach,
Or in the park.
or in the parks.
Or at an event.
Now, how does that change? If I
That's
make
right.
brownies with marijuana in them and I take them for my lunch on the beach, I'm not in violation of anything.
I think that, so we've talked to the town attorney about that, refining that code as far as what we're allowing.
Yeah, we've got a lot of work to do on that, on
Yeah,
the marijuana
Debbie, can
code.
you
Yeah.
put it up, we're
I don't know
gonna
what
have to
happened
talk,
to
we're
that.
gonna have to have a work session soon.
Oh,
on this.
absolutely.
Start the
'cause we've gotta
process,
address
because
it.
it
Yeah,
takes
I don't know where
effect
that
on-
went.
It takes effect on December 31st, and so we need, make sure that we look at the work session. That's gonna be a long work session.
Yeah, right now, I feel we're on solid ground as far as covering the smoking, which would be both marijuana and tobacco.
That makes sense to me.
Not
If
that
you-
it shouldn't be refined a little better as far as the definitions and wording and stuff, so.
Okay.
And certainly the marijuana issue and the alcohol policy are tied, so we need to look at them. You know, some of the parts of it, we need to look in conjunction with one another.
Okay, that's it? Kelly?
No. I mean, if you guys decide to propose changes, if you'd like to involve me, I can provide expertise from a substance use prevention standpoint.
Absolutely. Thank you for offering,
You're involved.
absolutely.
I do
But
want-
of course, again, like I just want to end with, we support a strong alcohol policy for public events.
Okay.
So let's meet next week.
And I agree.
Bob?
Yeah,
Let's meet next
absolutely.
week.
So we'll meet on the alcohol policy, and so that'd be Dan, let's see, who else do we need? Yes, no. Us four.
Right.
Okay, and then on the 255s, we'll
Add the
meet
fire
with
marshal and
the
alleviate
fire
that.
marshal, the chief, and town clerk's office. I don't know if you want to be involved in that, Dan, I don't know if you need to
Do you
be.
know who was involved initially on the 255 issue from the town attorney's office?
Laura,
Yeah,
Yes,
Laura
it was
Calamity.
Laura.
And I don't even think
Yeah.
it was Carol at that time.
It was
Yeah,
Laura,
I'm gonna talk
right.
about that a little bit. Yeah, I wanna talk a few minutes about the 255, but I don't need everybody, because you guys are
Kelly,
here for
if
the
you have
alcohol.
a minute, just give me 5 minutes with you on the marijuana thing, okay?
Okay.
Because I want to tell you what the chamber's doing with that.
Good, start the process. We're gonna have it soon.
Thank you, everybody.
So just to go back, so I just want to go back a little bit to the work that was done on the 255s. That work that was done on the 255s was over many weeks. It was tedious. It was Laura Calamita who was here talking about it, and it was the entire town board. It was Mr. Wooten, Laura Jen Smith, Mr. Hubbard, Giglio, and myself. So I actually am quite surprised that, accusations went out to me that I was championing the changes. I was part of a board that we were all sitting and going through this. So let me say to you, Mr. Kern, that is just straight up false information, not true, and if you don't believe me, go back and watch the videos. So I have no idea why you launched an attack on me that I was, making some kind of issue and problems. Not true. I was part of a board, we were all working on it, what we did was we really tried to listen to the workers in the town, I know that the fire marshal weighed in, Laura Calamita, there was a lot of discussion about, sometimes things came in at the last minute and they were rushed and they didn't have enough time. So that's where that work came about. Am I open to looking at this again? Yes, I came today ready to work. So frankly, you owe me an apology. That was actually lies.
Okay, well, you're going to have to apologize for calling me a liar. And if you felt that I attacked you, please accept my apology. At the time,
This
you
doesn't
were...
need to happen.
Yeah, guys, I think maybe you can go out in the hall and take
Well,
care
you
of
know
this.
what,
Wait,
when something's
can I
thrown out
finish?
about me, I'm gonna defend myself, I'm
Catherine.
gonna move on, let's be
No,
done
I'm
with it.
not moving on. You were the liaison to the Chamber of Commerce.
Right,
That's why we worked through you.
no, we didn't, it was through the whole board, Bob.
No, you were the liaison to the Chamber of Commerce, and we were trying to work with you. After that failed, I met
is
with
not-
Jim,
yeah.
I met with Jody, and I met with Tim, and went over some of the issues with it, okay? So we were trying to work with you on it.
No, that's just not true.
Okay.
Let's
I'm
move
done.
on.
That's
That's
very
not
much.
true.
Thanks, Bob.
That's absolutely
Appreciate
false.
it.
Thank you, guys. Okay. I wish we could
Yeah,
have ended
thank
at
you.
a better note, on a better note. So
Well-
in either case, I hope everyone remains well. And just a reminder that my office and the senior center, we are compiling a list for those seniors who need boosters. We have requested them from the governor's office and we are waiting to receive. Hopefully, we are gonna receive in the near future. So we're just compiling the list. You need to provide an approximate date that you received your last vaccine and the type of vaccine, your name and your phone number. As soon as they become available, we will give you a call. And again, I hope to see everyone at the fair this weekend and be safe. And that's about it. Have a good weekend. Thank you.
Thank you guys for even doing this.
Can I have a first and a second
Thanks, Bob.
to close the work session, please?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Please do.
All opposed? So moved. Again, be safe, everyone, and thank you.